Well, if it isn't old Diablo 4, my old frenemy, back to talk about Season of Blood. So if anybody doesn't know, the Season of Blood, the second Diablo 4 season coming out, is actually had a little bit of a discussion today, a little campfire chat or whatever they call them, and talked about the gameplay updates, changes, little fixes, things like that will be implemented in the Season of Blood, talked about the seasonal mechanic, and in this video, I'm going to kind of talk about some of those highlight changes, good, bad, whatever. And then what we're going to also do is talk about if those changes are impactful enough to actually be enough to fix Diablo 4. What a task, right? So overall, before we get into this, I wanted to talk about this little picture over here. What you're looking at is kind of the best analogy I can think of to describe the difference between the ARPGs out there right now. So I am landscaping my backyard right now. So I've been thinking about plants a lot, and obviously everybody knows Diablo 4 is called the skill twig. So over here on our left, we have Diablo 4, the olive tree. Not much substance, very stick-like, very skinny boy, and, you know, has minimal limbage to have any kind of shade or coverage at all. Last epoch over here is like, you know, your normal town tree, normal backyard shade tree that you would see. Has a nice little trunk, not too crazy, but just enough to get the job done. And then you have Path of Exile over here. It could be arguably overkill, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if you have a large area to cover. And in this case, the backyard is your brain, and the shade is the complexity that it will take in your brain to figure out, right? So now that we have that established, you can actually use this to determine what type of game you want to play and what you feel like your brain can handle. If it's not much, then boy, do I got a game for you. If it does require a medium amount, Last Epoch might be the choice. And if you're looking to ascend as a human and go to the next type of evolution, I would suggest Path of Exile for you. Now that we have that established, let's talk about some of the highlight changes that happen with Diablo 4 Season of Blood today. On the 10th, they're going to be talking about class changes and some other different little changes. So those won't be a part of this video, and not like really those are going to affect much of the core gameplay anyways, whether it's buffs or nerfs, things like that. So let's see if Pipora has piped us. So what you're looking at right now is various screenshots from the Season of Blood updates video. I'm going to kind of go over each one, and there's some stuff on here that I just kind of have to explain with words. But what we're looking at is essentially some model updates up here is part of the Bloodseekers update. They're adding basically, if you've played Path of Exile, it kind of reminds me of Syndicate a little bit without like Heist and all the other systems involved with it, right? But basically these player type AI characters, so like a sorcerer, a barbarian, or necromancer, or whatever, can just come out of nowhere and spawn and fight you, and you get special resources from them to help you upgrade like the seasonal mechanic. Down here we have some new enemy models. So we got some vampire boys. I don't see any that look like Edward, which is kind of sad. Hashtag Team Edward. And over here, this is my problem with the models, by the way, just to back up a bit. These are reused, and I'm not saying you have to have new models like every single season or all the time, but I mean, this is the second season. We haven't had one new model at all, or even talks of a possible new model. It just looks like reskinned, very blatant remodels of current models in the game. It's not a big take, it's just like a little teensy gripe. Over here, we have I think there's still going to be Helltides, but this is like the Helltide replacement, I guess. It's called Blood Harvest. So they reskin models and they also reskin Helltides. Basically, it's available at level 1. That's kind of the big difference. And you get special resources from them for the seasonal mechanic, right? So what we have down here is the actual seasonal mechanic power that will be input into the game. It's called Vampiric Powers. Honestly, this thing kind of reminds me of like a large cluster jewel socket in PoE, because I've been playing that a little bit, and that's literally what this entire mechanic looks like. Basically, you're going to get these like additional powers to, you know, amplify your abilities and stats and things like that. Not super confusing. It does add a layer of like extra abilities, things like that you can do to your skills, which I think is great. It's just very minimal, so there's not, much substance to it, not a lot of bite. The next thing over here is the Hunter's Acclaim. So this is basically a board that you can go to and submit, the seasonal materials, things like that, to, and get rewards based on your level in that acclaim chest. So you can see tons of different, unique item, like legendary items down here, and I'm sure it gets to uniques possibly as you get down the track. So I think these two things, I'm not going to shit on them. It's kind of cool. They're all right. Not a lot of depth to them, but it is just something nice to be added in, right? The next thing, we have these new bosses. I believe they said 2 of them were new, and 1 of them was a reused, reskin model, which is that's what we're used to. I'm used to reskinned models at this point for this. So what we're looking at here, they look nice. Graphically, Diablo 4 has always been a pretty game. I have always thought, they did a great job at making things look gritty. I hope the mechanics on these are better and more fleshed out than the others. I hope the visuals on them, I know they said on the traps, the visuals will be better inside of the dungeons, so the actual dungeon traps. But these bosses, the visuals on them hopefully will be improved to where you can see where something is landing or see where a mechanic is dropping and properly avoid it if necessary. Some fantastic news with this, because I know bosses were always something we wanted as a whole. I feel like there's actually targeted unique drops on bosses now. We're gonna have to see how that goes, and targeted uber uniques as well. So each boss has a unique loot table. I don't know how this applies to the pass uniques. I hope that maybe they're included in this table, so that way people have a better chance of getting them. I mean, because before, you honestly had a better chance of getting struck by lightning than you did of getting an Andariel's Visage, for example. I don't think I would have ever seen one in my entire life, so I'm hoping that is included so we can see people that actually grind for it. If you put the hours in, you'll get that item eventually, right? So we did get a couple more wins as well. We got the Renown and XP buffs, so it's going to be about 40% faster to get to level 100. I kind of laughed when they announced this because they probably have a metric that showed how many people didn't even get close to it, and they did not like that. They were like, oh, this is not good, right? So I'm glad they changed that. So now XP is actually multiplicative with world tier bonuses, which is a good thing. Renown, oh my god, this is one of the things I absolutely hated, is that I had to regrind for it in the season. So Renown now persists between seasons and characters. You don't have to do it again. I hope they really mean it this time. I want to log in and the Renown just be done. I don't want to have to deal with that. If I have to regrind, if I log in, if I try it out and I see I have to do Renown, I'm logging out. I will just log out immediately. I promise you. So they added some, in my opinion, quality of life changes as well, which I think were much needed. And I feel like they could have done a little bit faster to get it done. They have multiple different mount changes, but the biggest one that stood out to me was the spurs. So when you actually do the giddy up, it actually breaks the barricades, because getting stuck on those barricades was absolute nightmare. Everybody knows it. You'd just be kind of AFK walking, then you get stuck on a barricade, but doing that giddy up thing breaks through the barrier, so you should be able to run right through it. You can teleport to nightmare dungeons, which is even better because there was so much time wasted just running dungeon to dungeon. Even if you had a waypoint near, is just obnoxious, especially if you're grinding nightmare dungeons, right? And the last thing was the gemstone shard tab. So basically they're breaking up gemstones into these little shards. They don't drop as a whole anymore, and it gets put into a separate area in your bags. And then when you go to the gem crafter, you can craft the gem you actually need, and that will actually be put into your inventory. So if you craft 100 gems, there will be 100 gems in your inventory, but just craft them as needed. This I thought was kind of funny because I bet you it has something to do with coding. As everybody knows, everybody's stashes are loaded when you ever see anybody inside the town. So I'm wondering if that's the way gems worked too. So they would have to create a pseudo infinite space for actual gemstones to go into it, so they had to create another mechanic to fix a coding issue. I don't know, that's my own headcanon, and I just think it's hilarious to think about. But either way, it's some kind of a solution. And the very last thing, that I wanted to talk about that they announced is that they are launching on Steam. I don't know if they have a BDSM fetish or something, but everybody watched what happened to Overwatch 2 when they launched on Steam, and I'm absolutely mortified to see what's going to happen to Diablo 4 on the launch of Steam. Obviously, you have to buy the game to be able to comment, but I have seen so many people do much more spiteful things for less. They will buy that game, leave their shit comment to bomb this game, and then refund their money. I guarantee that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be absolute bloodbath. So we got Season of Blood. It's going to be a Season of Blood on Steam for sure. And that is all the updates for Season of Blood that they talked about, which brings us to the conclusion of this video and the answer to the question, is it enough to fix Diablo 4? The answer is no. This will not fix Diablo 4. It will not make it the game we all hope it to be. I think these are some positive changes. I think they go in the right direction, and I think some things, even the meme is "we hear you," right? I think they do hear a little, and implement a lot of what they hear into the game and try to as fast as they can within the bounds of a AAA game. AAA games I've talked about are inherently slow at getting change done, but it looks like they did quite a few of them, but it's not going to fix Diablo 4. And the reason for that comes back to this analogy, right? We're looking at all these trees here, and you look at the foundations of these trees. You got a mighty freaking base trunk over here, big dickin'. You got the last epoch. It's a little bit skinnier, but it's enough to, hold the meat and potatoes. And then you come to Diablo 4, and the foundation of this game is inherently flawed, unfortunately. I think just from the Paragon system and the skill twig itself, we have an olive tree for a skill tree. I really think Diablo 4 just needs to go back to the board on the fundamentals of their core systems in the game, such as like the skill tree and the Paragon tree, right? To really flesh out something that's going to engage the player and keep them invested past level 70. Because at level 70, you're pretty much done with your character. You have like the idea of what's going on. You're just basically min-maxing at that point, which arguably, yeah, ARPGs are about min-maxing, but if you don't have a player engaged to even reach the max level in your game, what are you even doing? Obviously, the vampire powers are kind of cool, right? I think they're cool. Is it a lot? No, not really. But I even thought the malignant stuff was kind of cool. But the problem is that stuff goes away with each season. Nothing compounds on top of each other. There's nothing rolled over into the next season. It's just like, here's the system. All right, now it's gone. And when it comes to stuff like that, like rolling systems into the next league or the next system itself, you have to be careful of content bloat. And I'm not saying that that's the answer to do that, but that's why I suggested the fundamentals of kind of going back to the baseline skill tree and the Paragon tree and figuring out what it is that's going to make a player really tick, like what is that that's gonna, like, what is your mouth gonna savor over, what's that next point gonna do that completely changes the build, right? So there it is, boys. Diablo 4 Season 2, the Season of Blood. Will I be playing it? I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out for a little bit just to see the changes. It doesn't really take long to, play the content. Will I be buying a battle pass? No. And neither should you, really. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know if you'll be playing next season or trying it out, if it's too little too late. Whatever the case is for you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate y'all. Have a good day.